Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cinderbay podcast. I'm your host Amrita Sukumar, and today I'm going to talk to Josefa Rangwala, who is the co-founder of Muse Lab. He's an MA graduate from Georgia Institute of Technology. He, along with his partner, are the ones responsible for creating magical spaces across the country. In his free time, he enjoys trying new things like doing this podcast with me. I hope that's true, Josefa. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think, reaching out to students and sort of, lending a voice to them is sort of a great thing. And, lending our experiences is also actually even better. So I'm excited, looking forward to this.
Yes, I'm excited too because I've read through your projects and I wish and hope that we knew about all this during our college days. Because if we did, I think we would be better architects. We would be knowing about a lot of design principles that are out there because you keep on trying new things, and that's definitely a plus. So, to the students
Sure.
of Cinder Bay, please do watch this and stay tuned. So, diving right in, Josefa, what is the story of Muse Lab? How did it all start?
So I I don't know. I've spoken so much about Muse Lab in the lockdown because we had so many live sessions. But I'm going to repeat it one more time
Thank you.
for those. So it will definitely sound like a very cheesy love story. But Jassim and I, we met in 2004, and we were actually, I was in the US. I just completed my master's, and Jassim was doing his master's at the Savannah College of Art and Design. So one of those long weekends is when I happened to drive down from Atlanta to Savannah because we had common friends, and that's when I bumped into him and a couple of other friends of ours, and we just connected, we clicked, and I think from then on we kind of realized that we have a lot of common interests. So on my way back to India, it was kind of my exit trip, so both of us, we kind of went backpacking to Mexico. We were traveling for almost 14 days, and I think that's when we realized that we have so many common interests, like traveling, food, and design, of course. And I think that's when the sort of seeds of Muse Lab were germinated, where we decided that if at all we want to do something in design together, I think we would definitely we'd definitely join hands. So 2012 is when we kind of decided to, exit our practices that we were working with. We both were working in Bombay at the time,
Yeah.
and that's when we were like, okay, let's start doing something together, and that's how Muse Lab was formed. And interestingly, when we started Muse Lab, also, I think for the first month we did not even have a name. We were
Oh,
working out of Kasim's dad's office,
yes.
and we kind of he was kind enough to give us a conference room. So we had set up a little shop over there. I had my laptop, he had his desktop, and we were trying to figure out, okay, what can we call this practice? So I think there was a lot of discussions, and then we were sort of toying between Muse Lab or Muse Kitchen, or there was something else also. But I think eventually we kind of went with Muse Lab because it just made a lot of sense for us.
Yeah,
So
because
that's our.
so Muse Lab, in the sense you are musing and creating something in that space for the spaces.
Yeah, so the thing is that, of course, I mean, if you look at it as a verb, to muse is to think,
Yes.
right? And if you look at it in terms of, I mean, a muse also is a person or who
Yeah.
sort of inspires, right? So for us, we look at finding our muse in our projects or our clients, or something
Okay.
like that. Laboratory is a place where you do a lot of research, you ideate, you make mistakes, there are explosions, right? There's everything that happens in a lab, correct? It's
Yes.
crazy, it's chaotic, but I think at the end there is a result, good or bad. I think that it just formed like two, and of course we wanted to ensure that the name was catchy. We were
Right.
bored of reading ateliers and studios and this and that, and we're like, okay, how can we be a little different right at the onset? And I think that it really helped. But yeah, the name has been butchered badly. Like Muse Lab became Muse Lab, and Muse Lab became Music Lab, and we've had like the most. It's not enough that our names Josefa and Jassim have been butchered. Even
Oh
till date,
yes.
they're constantly butchered. You know, I mean, like Jasmine gets called Jasmine, and I get called like, like Jose Shah or something like that. I don't know. It's weird. So we wanted to continue the legacy, and even our firm name has been
Oh
a little
yeah,
different.
I get it. No, I
Yes.
swear I watched all your videos to make sure that I got the pronunciations right. Because I know the name is very important, right? That's what
Yeah,
defines you. And I was
absolutely.
actually thinking, what does Muse Lab mean? Does it mean musing or the other version of muse, like inspiration? But it means
Right.
both. So
Right. Yeah, it means both. Yeah,
that's true.
absolutely.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. Yeah. So how did you meet Mr. Jassim Pirani? If I'm not wrong, Jassim Pirani,
So Jassim.
Jassim. Oh,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
missed Jassim.
No problem. So, how did we meet?
Yes.
Yeah, so like I said that he was studying at Savannah College of Art and Design,
Okay.
and I happened to go there to meet a common friend over a long weekend, and we just we were all sort of because this friend of mine knew Jassim,
Oh.
and we all just caught up over lunch. It was like a big group of 10 to 12 people,
Mhm.
and I think it was just he is just a genuinely nice chap. Like he is amongst all our friends, he's like one of those guys that everyone will reach out to, and he's always there for everyone. So I think it's the vibe and the energy, right? I mean, sometimes you kind of just click, and it was just over that lunch conversation, and then we were all just hanging out for 3 days, and that was our sort of short meeting, with then sort of led to more conversations, more travel through the US. I think that's how it was. Then when he moved to New York, and I was applying for a job in New York. I was giving a couple of interviews, and we had like a bunch of friends staying in New York as well. So I think it was over a period of time, like between 2005 and 2008. We did like have a lot of interactions in that sense. So yeah, because we
That's
were living in different cities. I was in
yeah,
Atlanta
exactly. Hmm.
to New York. So yeah, but I think our meeting was sort of very brief, but we connected immediately.
Oh, right. Because I read about you and you were studying in different colleges, so I was really wondering how you met for the first time.
Correct, correct. Yeah, that's how it was.
Okay. So, Josefa, I absolutely love your website. It's beautiful. Every project is really well designed and it's explained really well. So, and plus the title of the projects, hide and seek, where there is space for the cat to hide and seek the pets using color pops. When it comes to Oh Precious, there are stones that are there. So, who designed one, who designed the website, and two, who is writing all these beautiful articles? That is what I want to know.
So, when it comes to designing the website, basically we've kind of borrowed a stencil from Squarespace, if I'm not wrong,
Mhm.
and we've been using that for the past 10 years. It's like one of those rental websites. I think the whole idea was to ensure that we control our website ourselves, because it's very difficult to outsource it. So I think as much as possible, both Jassim and I share responsibilities, and like we manage things. And I think that really helps. I think it really helps a practice to have two people who kind of play, I think, towards their strengths in that sense.
Yeah.
When it comes to our projects, so this is something that, when we started a practice, we were very clear that every project should be designed in a way that it is going to be documented. So I think that in itself allowed us to focus on details, allowed us
Mhm.
to differentiate between project A and project B. That this project has more budget and the site is more exciting, so let's focus on this and let's ignore the other one. So I think we equal importance to every project. Each one was literally treated like our child, and I think that's where the whole ritual of naming the project began. And Jassim is the official priest when it comes to naming the project. Gives comes up with these really cool names for every project. And I think it's really helped us also, because in some way when we have to go back also, yeah, okay, if we talk about the Confederate Rose, or if we
Mhm.
talk about, let's say, a very first project which was Braided Comfort, I mean, we know it. We not
Yes.
forgot any of our projects. I mean, sometimes you've done something like, oh yeah, when was this? Yeah, okay, back then.
Hmm.
But I think the idea of naming the project has made every project a lot more closer to us, I think equally.
Yes.
So that's how it
Yeah,
is.
I did notice it because, instead of just saying that project that we did last time, it's very easier to say Urban Light or, Bombay Shirt
Yeah,
Company, anything which you have done.
correct,
So,
correct,
yes,
correct.
it is
So yeah,
quite
so there,
easier.
there are certain projects where, like the Varun Bell store, for example, or
Mhm,
Sequel,
mhm.
Bombay Shirt Company. I mean, this is where we couldn't really give them a name because they're already brands,
Yes,
right?
right, right,
So
right.
that's where we obviously sort of, stuck to giving them the name that it is associated with. So
Mhm.
which is why the restaurant is called Sequel,
Right.
and Varun store is called Varun Bell store. So that's why we didn't decide to give it a name.
Right. Okay, I get it. But it's really beautifully designed. I absolutely loved going through each one of your projects,
Thank
and
you.
they're magical.
Thank you. I think what was also important is that when we were selecting the stencil, we wanted to make sure that it was very clear and simple, and it
Mhm.
was not too empowering. There was not too much of drama in terms of using flash or this or that, or suddenly an image is coming and disappearing.
Yes, yes,
Had to be like very friendly, right? So that even if a layman, like if a client, a prospective client is going through it had to be visually clear. You
yes.
know, wanted to avoid doing extra gimmicks.
Mhm.
So that Jig shines and not the website. I think
Yeah.
that's a very important card to play,
Uh-huh.
even for the students or anyone who's looking to start on their own.
Right. Yes, I completely agree because when I read through it, I could relate to it. And sometimes, there were points where I could not visualize certain things. So when I went back, saw the picture, and came back up, it was absolutely clear. Whatever the points that you wanted to put across were absolutely clear. So,
Right.
Josefa, every project has a different element to it. So it is a color pop with hide and seek, or the minimalism with naked, or the different colors of red that you used in the Confederate rose. So, my question to you is, what is the process of design for each of your project, from meeting the client to handing it over?
So when it comes to the design process, what we do
Hmm.
is that we meet the client, or when that first call happens, right? We kind of ask the client to give us, their wish list, which is more like a room-wise wish list. We always ask them to share images that they vibe with. Every client today has their own Pinterest board, you know. So we tell them that, okay, you know what, why don't you share with us, maybe 8 to 10 images that you most resonate with,
Hmm.
right? We ask them their budget, which is very important,
Yes.
right? We then also ask them, if they want their home to be Vastu compliant, which is also very
Yeah.
important.
Yes.
It shouldn't happen that halfway to the project, suddenly, Vastu, comes in play. And obviously, then we ask them for their timeline,
Hmm.
and as to when you want to start the finish, when you want to complete it. Once we get these five parameters from the client, we then sort of start working on it. So we have a very clear four-stage process where what we do is that the first three stages are dedicated to the drawing board, and the
Right.
fourth stage is where we get onto actual site work.
Hmm.
So our first stage is where we do space planning, where we are essentially translating the client's wish list into a two-dimensional drawing.
Hmm.
The second stage where we are presenting the three-dimensional visuals and we substantiate it with reference images. So this is where they start understanding what the home is going to look like. The third stage is where we sort of create a complete set of technical drawings, where we do our working drawing set, right? So
Hmm.
that's where we prepare the entire document. After that, we give that set to our contractor. The contractor comes back to us with an estimate, and then that is shared with the client.
Hmm.
Idea being, before we break ground, the client, the architect, and the contractor, all three agencies know what the home or the space is going to look like and how much it's going to cost.
Right.
So that's the idea. And also just in general, I mean, of course, we get paid for every process, so please don't work for free, whoever is listening. That's very important.
That's very
We get
important.
yeah, we get paid right from the point that we are signed on, and
Hmm.
every stage paid for, to a point where, yes, we do take like at least 60% of our agreed fee before the work starts on site, and the remaining 40% is then divided through the process. But that's more the technical side of it. I think when it comes to the actual design side of it, what's very important for, I think, us, is to understand that at the end of the day, it is not I, as the designer, who's going to be occupying the space. It is the client who's going to be occupying the space. And you need to put yourself in their shoes when you're designing a space. This architecture and design is a very client driven profession.
Hmm.
Yes, you will, in the course of your profession, find clients who are patronizing you and your work, and you can do whatever the hell you want to do. But of the projects have to be designed in a way that you are keeping the client in mind. So what we do is that when we get that mood board, or and through conversations, we kind of try to understand what they are expecting from their space. I mean, think about it. That they're first home buyers, right? I
Mhm.
mean, they have so much of inspiration from you as a designer as to what you're going to build for them. And this is not like going and buying up a shirt, right? That okay, I like it today, tomorrow I don't like it. This is
Right.
something that's going to be permanent. So it's a huge responsibility on our shoulder as designers to kind of create something that has permanence, and that permanence is directly proportionate to happiness also that they're going to experience in that space. So we constantly are looking at different ways to design. We do not have a style, we are not married to a style, and I think we are very clear about that, and we are very happy with it. Like, I mean, if you look at like stalwarts like a Zaha Hadid, like a Stephen Hall, or like if you look at a Bijoy Jain, or any of our contemporaries. I mean, we know that a lot of people have style, but we were very clear that having a style is actually sort of forcing you to just be in that one bubble. And
Mhm.
for us, the idea is that with every bubble, with every project, we want to kind of break the mold, and we want to kind of experience different things for you as well. So that's why it's very important for us that when a project comes to us, we're not like redundant, or we're not like like duplicating ourselves.
Mhm.
And so whether it's an art deco project or an art nouveau project, or like a project that's minimal, I think it's not just about getting influenced by a reference image, or a certain mood board. It is understanding the nuances of that particular ism in design,
Mhm.
right? It's understanding proportions, it's understanding where you need to restrain yourself from overdoing things, or where you can overdo things. So we've done everything from maximalism to minimalism to essentialism to art deco, art nouveau. It's not about having a buffet of projects and becoming a different design, but it's about like learning
Yeah.
through the course of your creative journey.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's really important. So whether it's applying sustainability in design,
Mhm.
whether it's like working with craftsmen, I think every project for us offers something to learn, not just for us as designers, not for just for Jassim and myself, but also for the entire studio. So I think that's our overarching philosophy.
Wow,
I
that's
hope I didn't
beautiful.
bore you guys. Yeah.
No, 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 no. It's very interesting. So I just had a follow-up question. So when you get a project and you understand what the client wants and needs, so do you decide that, I want to try a new style of design in it, or it just comes to you? And do you
No,
read
so that's a
about
good
it?
question. Yeah, no, that's a great question, because 90% of our clients come to us with a certain mood board, right?
Right.
And I think that mood board kind of helps us establish the direction that we want to go in,
Mhm.
right? So, like when we design the Confederate Rose, that project is, like I said, it's like a mix of colors and patterns, and but it's still very, very sort of unifying in that sense. We designed it like that because it was a 7,000 square feet home, fairly large.
Yeah.
Our clients were not living in India; they were living outside the country, and where they were living, that home was very palatial and very ornamental. Like it
Mhm.
was very, right? So we said, okay, you know what? If he's coming to India and this is kind of his space where he wants to unwind, and he doesn't want to stay in a hotel, right? What can you do over here to make it fun and innovative and exciting? And
Right.
that's why, there was that whole sort of play of colors and patterns. So I
Mhm.
think it's sometimes also understanding where the client comes from, and what he or she is expecting from that space. I
Mhm.
think that really plays a huge role in driving how you want to design or what you can offer to the client.
Oh, I got it. Because my favorite is the Mason deco, and from the upholstery to the design to the wall art, which you said was custom made, and especially the
Right,
mirror on which there was a woman with the line drawing. That's my favorite.
right.
So
Nice.
I just wondered,
Yeah,
like, what is
yeah.
the client's thought process as well when you are designing something new?
So now that particular project, so Mesa Deco and Deco Ground, both these projects belong to two brothers, right?
Mhm.
And both the same floor. So there
Yeah.
is a common lobby, and you go left, and there's Mesa Deco, and you go right, and there's Deco Ground. Now both these projects were actually our interpretation on Art Deco.
Uh-huh.
Mesa Deco is extremely, it's more sort of, like the traditional or the more sophisticated version of Art Deco,
Right.
and Deco Ground is actually a very quirky take on Art Deco, where
Mhm.
we played a lot of boring tiles and things like that. So I think that particular project is where, again, uh, Deco Ground is for the younger brother and Mesa Deco is for the elder one. So I think it's again in a way reflective of their personality
Yeah.
and what we want. But I think they did not tell us upfront that they wanted Art Deco.
Mhm.
All that plus is that we've been in Bombay and we want our home to in some way reflect Bombay. And I think Art Deco has been such it's played such a huge influence on, let's say, the skyline of Bombay, right? In terms of, let's say, even Marine Drive, right? Like the
Mhm.
entire Marine has like so many of these Art Deco buildings. So I think we took some of our influences from there, and we said, okay, let's kind of play with this as an idea for these two homes.
Wow.
Yep.
That's really beautiful. It's actually breathtaking. I love it.
Thank you.
So when did you venture into furniture design aspect of things? I love the tangram the most.
So this was around 2015, and what happened was that there was a little downtime in the studio,
Mhm.
and we said, I think this is perfect. Projects are not coming in, so it's time to do something because uh, we are very clear that we don't want to sit idle and so kind of crib that okay there are no projects, right? Let's do our own projects, right? That was
Right.
the idea. So that's Muse Mart started, and Muse Mart essentially was our entire, the effort was to sort of create objects,
Mhm.
objects which are, which are very tangible, right? Which could be like accessories, and the idea was also in some way to set our own briefs, right? Because when you get a project from a client, the client is giving you the brief. This
Right.
is my requirement. I want this, and you're
Mhm.
always responding to. But when you're designing a product, you set the brief, right? And I
Yeah.
think that in some way gives you a lot of freedom, right? It's kind of it puts you in a different zone. It comes with its own set of responsibilities because you have to make that product work and successful as well. But I think 2015 was when we started working on like coasters. We designed a wine rack. We designed trivets. We designed these architectural wall hooks, which are my personal favorite.
Yes.
There were a lot of these products that we kind of worked on, and that sort of was the start of Muse Mart. And our first line was where we worked with birch ply as a material, and all our products we designed around 9 different products, and they were all designed with birch ply. So I think it was great because we spent almost a year designing coasters.
Yes.
Us 1 year to understand that material,
Mhm.
1 year research and development, etc., to create that. And that did turn out to be one of our most successful products. But it's very enriching. I think what designing products does is that it allows you to think at a completely different scale, because you're now designing not spaces, but you're like objects,
Right.
right? Um, uh, the minute you come from the background of architecture and or design just a little, I think because when you're an architect versus when you're an interior designer versus when you're a product designer,
Mhm.
in terms of education, you are constantly designing at very different scales. Like in architecture, you're taught to do master plans as
Yeah.
well, right? We work
Mhm.
town planning design, so the scale is really different. But products is like a completely different scale. That's why for us, our studio is not, we don't call ourselves architects. We call ourselves designers,
Right.
because we don't want to limit ourselves to a scale. So we completely changed our titles. We are designers. We love to design. You give us anything and we will design that as long as you are excited about it as a client and we are excited about it as designers. So that's how we look at it.
Oh, nice. So I saw Tangram and it was so amazing. Like I think there are 9 blocks which you can place in different variations, and it looks
Right.
really beautiful. So
Right.
that was my favorite. I have seen all the other aspects of furniture design. I think Candy is also very peppy. The candy chair.
Yes. So basically, this was last year, year before last, in 2019, when it was our first showing at the Raw Collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
This is when we designed a collection called the Hedonist Collection, which was our first furniture collection.
Mm-hmm.
We designed 16 pieces, and the entire collection was the larger idea was that it was like a box of chocolates. So when you box of chocolates, you find these different objects or these different pieces, right? I
Yeah.
mean, one is glazed, one is just chocolate by itself, different colors, and each chocolate has its own taste, its own flavor. But
Yeah.
each piece of chocolate is very satisfying, also, right? So our entire collection, the idea was that it is like a box of chocolates, you know. Why every piece is named after, either a kind of chocolate or the process of chocolate making. So yeah.
Ah. Now I
So there's
get it.
eclair, there's tart, there is sort
Yes.
of a bonbon. If
Yeah.
you go, yeah,
I just saw the candy and I'm like, oh, maybe there is some profound meaning behind the names of other chairs.
yeah, that chair is called couverture, which actually is the process of glazing chocolate.
Ah, I should know
Like,
more about chocolates considering the fact that I love them.
yeah,
I will
great.
research. So I did come across one of your designs for the coronavirus design competition, Market on Wheels.
So,
So do you participate in a lot of competitions and what would you suggest that the youngsters do? Does it help them in any way?
yes, I think participating in competitions is extremely important. Last year during the lockdown, we participated in almost 5 competitions.
Mhm.
One of them, and they were national, international level competitions. And I think what it does is that, it's very important to stay grounded, right? Because it's the minute you get hit by success, and I'm not saying we are successful at all yet, but you kind of like start going in different directions, and you start ignoring issues that are prevalent, right? And I think what competitions do, and kudos to people who come up with these ideas or these briefs also,
Mhm.
I think it allows you to be a part of a nexus of designers who are coming up with different solutions for the same problem. And the minute you are a part of that nexus, and whether you win or lose, that doesn't matter, but I think that whole process of engaging with your studio to come up with these different ideas to create a solution at the end of the day, which is part of so many such solutions that, if they are put collectively, can actually resolve a global
A lot.
crisis.
Yes.
I think that's what competitions do. So whether it's an ideas competition or whether it is a real competition, it doesn't matter. But keep participating in competitions. I think it really builds your portfolio. It really sort of helps you understand issues which are not just local but also global, and it allows you at the end of the day to do so much research that you probably would be, oh my god, like, I mean, why did I not know of this, that there is someone in another corner of the world with a similar context who is addressing the same solution, the problem, in a very different way. So I
Hmm.
think competitions are important. I would genuinely urge everyone to work on competitions.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that. So I also came across one of your projects called the Fluid series for Nuance Studio. So have you designed any other fixtures or accessories for bathroom since then?
No, so we designed around 3 wash basins,
Uh-huh.
and that's the other thing, right? Like I said, that, I mean, when I graduated from architecture in 2002, I would have never realized that in 2020 I would be designing a wash basin, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty about collaboration, and we are we love collaborating. We have collaborated with someone to do outdoor furniture in Ratan. We've collaborated with rug makers. We have collaborated with like Nuance, like I said, to design wash basins. I think it allows you to of course, design objects which are completely different, but in some way also sort of understand manufacturing processes that you are not aware of.
Correct.
So when we designed a basin, there were so many things to sort of learn and unlearn, right? as designer, as an interior designer or an architect, I would just buy a basin and plop it, right?
Right.
But when you're actually designing one, to understand the technicalities of it is like a whole different high. I mean, I think that's amazing. So yeah, we did that last year as well throughout the I think the lockdown just was superb for us. I don't mean it in that way. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very, very bad time for everyone. But I think what we did was that we did not let it affect us as a studio. I think the whole idea was because everyone was going through a lot of mental issues.
Mhm.
Mental health was taking a toll on everyone. People were so frustrated being home. And I think for us, it was very important to ensure that, our people or our studio was constantly doing something or the other.
Yeah.
So Kasim and myself, we made sure that for those 6, 7 months, we were busy every day of the week,
Yeah.
and to be able to generate work when sites were shut, when there was no projects coming in, I think that was a big deal for us. I'm sorry I'm digressing, but it just kind of channeled
No.
into
I understand.
conversation.
I understand.
Yeah. But I think the lockdown actually allowed us to collaborate with a lot of other people also. So yeah, that's how this whole Basin with Nuance came across.
So in true sense, you're designers. If you get a chance to design anything, you're like up game for it and you try new things
Yes.
always.
Yeah, one of our first projects was a public toilet prototype. And
Oh.
last year in 2020, we also participated in a competition where we designed a public toilet again. So yeah, I think as long as the whole thing is that, as designers, you are problem solvers, right? Because when you're in college also, what do you get? Your brief is nothing but a problem, I
Right.
mean, hated solving problems in math when I was in school. But like when it comes to design problems, I love solving them. So the minute you treat it as that, I think then you start coming up with a lot of ideas.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah.
Okay. Quite interesting. So, Josefa, what do you do in a day? Like, do you keep up with the trends or what do you like doing?
Um, so I love watching tennis. So I make sure that when I am not working, I am watching tennis.
Okay.
I enjoy food. It doesn't show on me, but yeah, I love eating. Uh, when it comes to trends, yes, I am always on Instagram. I
Okay.
love Instagram. I think I love that medium only and only because it has given NewsLab an amazing platform to and it has given us a lot of exposure. What's beautiful about this platform, at least for us, and I'm not saying it will work for everyone, but it has really worked well for us, is that today 90% of our projects come from Instagram,
Oh.
and it's been like a great tool for us. But at the same time, I think it also gives us a sort of a foot in the door kind of a thing for in the lives of so many other designers across the world, people who are doing some fantastic work. And I think so yeah, so when I'm not doing anything, I'm always Instagramming.
Like most
Bad
of
thing to
us.
do. Yeah, it's a bad thing to do also because sometimes you want to take that digital detox.
Yes.
But I think I take a lot of inspiration from a lot of amazing people who are doing so much good work, And of course, inspiration can mean directly copying, or inspiration means truly getting inspired and, to do something good, just like how others are doing. So it's your call. Of course, go for the latter and not the former. Uh, that's my advice. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Instagram can be also used as a tool, right? If you know whom to follow and use it in the right way instead of just scrolling mindlessly. So makes
Absolutely.
sense.
Sometimes I just do that also.
Okay. Well, your website, when you mentioned tennis, your website also mentioned that you're a tennis champion. Is that true?
No, I'm not a tennis champion. I'm not, but yes, I used to play tennis. So when I was in Atlanta, I also sort of participated in the Atlanta League. So I think
Oh.
that was like a big thing for me. Yeah, yeah.
So you are a tennis champion of sorts. Okay.
No, no, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I've not played that sport in the past 10 years now. So, but I still enjoy watching it, and
Right.
I'm a fan of Rafa Nadal. So he's like my god, my idol.
Okay, coming to the last and final question. What lessons have you learned from your experience that you would like to pass on to the youngsters?
Um, this is always a question that can either sound like a rant, or it can sound too pedagogical, or but uh, I think, sorry, I think it's really important to be patient. That's the first thing. The second thing is that professional life is of course very different from student life.
Yes.
I would genuinely urge everyone to start working. So whether you are in a 5-year program or a 3-year program, immediately start working. You can even go and work with your carpenter, or you can even intern with a designer right at the onset. You can work with a potter. I mean, but do something, get your hands dirty, because that's something that I did not do. I think I sort of came out of my design shell very late. I think for me, 5 years of academics was only about doing good in my academics, right? And I
Right.
forgot, or there was no one to tell me at that point of time that, okay, get out and do something, right? And I think that's something that was the biggest mistake that I made. So for me, it's really, really important that, when I give this sort of an advice also, I think it's very important to get your hands dirty. That's the first thing. The other thing is, like I said, yeah, you got to be patient. When you are designing or when you're in a professional field, you need to choose your battles. This is something that Jassim has taught me. I'm one of those people who gets anxious really quick. So let's say, if a project has come across, and we've given our presentation, and a client does not respond for a week, and I'm like, oh my god, where's this client gone? Does he like my work? Does he like our work? Have we done something right or wrong or whatever it is? And then Jassim is like, okay, calm down, breathe, take it, right? So I think, it's really important to know what battles to fight, and
Yeah.
what to sort of just like sort of step back and say, okay, you know what, it's okay. Because at the end, what we need to understand is that, the project cannot suffer. The project is the most important thing. It's not about the client, it's not about the architect, it's not about the contractors. At the end, it's about the project. And of course, yes, the client, because the client is going to be inhabiting that project, or being is the end user. But we need to sort of respect that in some way. And the other thing, that I would also want to sort of mention is that, when you are starting your practice, it's not easy. The first 3 or 4 years is where you'll be genuinely struggling, unless you have your networks in place, and you are well connected, right? But otherwise, it is definitely a struggle. Like both Jassim and I, we are first generation architects. We did not have a network of people to reach out to. So I think the first 4 years was a genuine struggle. I mean, the only way that we could market ourselves is through publications, and thank God for Instagram in that sense, because that really helped us, market ourselves better. I mean, there are a lot of pointers. I think it's very difficult to sum it up in such a small sort of conversation. But you cannot just be an architect or an interior designer or a designer when you're starting your practice. You need to understand business. You need to understand legalities. You need to be a good marketing person. There are so many facets. There are so many facets to running a good practice. Do not be a boss, be a mentor to people who are working in your studio.
Yeah.
The minute you start being a boss and acting like one, I'm sorry, but you will fail miserably. I'm not saying that people who've been bosses or good bosses have not had good practices, but I feel like for us, the minute you're a mentor, you are ensuring that someone is working with you and not for you. And that's a very, very important thing. I think for us, our practice, our people is everything for us. We are one big family, who does good stuff, who tries to, who try to do good things, in design at least. So yeah, so that's where we are at. And that's kind of scattered piece of advice. I think I was all over in this last 5 minutes. I don't know if people get it, but maybe if you edit it rightly, maybe they'll understand it.
No, they did. I'm sure they will. If not now as students, but when you get out there, you will go back to this advice and remember every single point that Josefa has given right now,
Sure,
because
sure.
it will help you out in the real world. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Josefa. Thank you so much for taking time out of your life. I would just like to take this moment to say that you create magic. The joy and beauty that each space brings is so heartwarming. I'm so lucky to have this opportunity to talk to you and share your journey. And thank you.
Thank you.
You've inspired one person today. I'm sure you'll inspire many others.
Well, I'm glad Jasmine and myself can do this, and we're just striving to do this on a daily basis. So yes, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.